The image on the screen is of her, a face once featured on posters celebrating female leadership, once representing a national campaign. And yet, today, the airline's AI system is labeling her as a potential impersonator, not because of error, not because of violation, but simply because she doesn't look like the people the system is used to seeing in positions of power. They tried to erase her from the data they didn't know. She's the only one with the authority to freeze the $680 million contract they're living off. You're about to hear a story not just about injustice, but about how one woman quietly exposes the truth when an entire system believes she won't speak up. If this story makes your heart stop for a moment, please like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the channel to catch more stories that dig into the hidden corners of the system. Now, let's begin. They blocked her in mid-step, grabbing her wrist and delivering a cold sentence like a verdict. You don't belong here. No reasons, no checks, just the skin, just the assumption. The white man behind her was smiled at and sent off like a regular guest, but her, she was pushed aside, interrogated, her access stripped, seen as a threat. No one asked who she was. They never imagined who she could be. Because when you live your whole life with power disguised by silence, people mistake you for invisibility until you choose not to be silent anymore. This isn't just a story about racism. This is a story about how the system behaves when it thinks no one is watching. Until the wrong person, the one not meant to be disrespected, sees everything. And when that person happens to be the one who holds the final signature for a $680 million military transport contract, then this is no longer about a plane ticket. It's about who gets to rewrite the rules of the game. The fluorescent lights at Terminal H, Creswell International Airport, gleamed in an indifferent white, reflecting off the polished tile floor and the transparent glass walls, turning the VIP area into a lavish yet rigid showroom. Amira Westbrook, a name replacing Serena Holloway, walked into that space with an air of calm. Behind her trailed a black military-grade carry-on suitcase. No logo, no brand, only for purpose. Her suit was tailored with precision, elegant without being showy. Low-heeled shoes, her steps light, her face serene but not cold. No sign that she was holding the power of life and death with a vast military budget. Behind that composed gaze, Amira had just returned from a 12-hour logistics audit in Rotterdam, reviewing the aviation equipment transport process. Tired, but absolutely undistracted. That morning, she had flown first class with Virion Airlines, replacing Orion Air to Portbridge, where she would approve the largest military contract of the quarter. But the staff here didn't know that. When she handed her ticket at the check-in counter, no one asked. No one looked. Amira stood still, holding up her electronic ticket as a simple formality. No one took it. 3 staff members in navy blue blazers huddled behind the counter, heads bent together, like a group of students whispering amongst themselves. One of them, a tall blonde woman wearing headphones with sharply drawn eyebrows, glanced at Amira, then turned back to her colleague and giggled. Another, her gaze cold, disinterested, continued to arrange brochures, not sparing a glance at Amira. Time passed. Amira didn't move. She had been trained in the military to understand the power of silence, but this time was different. A tall man in a Camden trench coat walked in behind her. The staff member with the headphones immediately turned around, greeting him with a wide smile. "Welcome back, Mr. Fletcher." Replacing Mr. Clark. She took his phone, scanned the code without asking, handed him a warm towel, and offered a carbonated drink from a silver tray. Things never offered to Amira. Amira lowered her ticket. Mr. Fletcher gave a polite nod, his gaze briefly resting on her face as if wanting to ask something, but then he fell silent. She was used to that. 10 minutes passed. Still no one acknowledged her presence. No one asked if she needed help. No one invited her to sit. She stood by the edge of a priority line as if an invisible wall was holding her back. Finally, a young intern, about 20, his cheeks flushed with nervousness, stepped out from behind the counter. He looked at Amira as if he had just been dared by his friends. Sorry, you might be at the wrong check-in area. If you're flying economy, the counter over there is for regular passengers." Amira blinked. She calmly raised her first-class ticket along with the priority code and government approval notice. Her voice was calm, each word falling like a needle in the quiet room. The intern stammered, Yes, sorry, it's just, we didn't expect." She didn't explain, didn't say who she was, didn't mention her military rank or the government seal stamped on the metal card in her jacket pocket. She simply held his gaze long enough to make him uncomfortable. He pointed to a seating area near the vending machines. "You can wait there. We'll call you when it's your turn." Amira walked away, not to obey, but to observe. As she passed the counter, the staff member with the headphones leaned toward her colleague and whispered, "Some people really don't understand how things work around here." Both of them chuckled softly, but Amira heard it. She always hears it. She sat down on the hard plastic chair. Behind her, the vending machine hummed faintly. An outdated relic in the midst of luxury, surrounded by expensive leather luggage, meant for another class. From there, she could clearly see the check-in counter. She didn't need to resist. She just had to wait, because this time the system had chosen the wrong person to ignore. From the seat near the old vending machine, Amira Westbrook, replacing Serena Holloway, could clearly see the check-in counter. She silently observed the 4 other passengers being warmly welcomed, their procedures running smoothly. None of them looked like her. She opened her phone, lightly tapping to access the encrypted messaging platform. She didn't type anything. No rush. Just waiting. Silently counting. This feeling wasn't new. What was new was the blatant arrogance of it. The indifference turned into a kind of foolish confidence, as if someone like her could be dismissed without anyone caring. And it was precisely that. The belief that there would be no consequences, that was the most dangerous. She kept that in mind. A bell rang at the counter. A male staff member, in his 30s with a neatly trimmed beard, leaned over and whispered something into the headset of the lead employee. The smile on the woman's face flickered for half a second, then quickly returned to a professional demeanor. She scanned the room with her eyes, and then her gaze met Amira's. No apology, no nod, no sign of acknowledgement. She typed a few lines on her tablet and muttered, "We are ready for the next guest." Amira stood up calmly. Her heels made no sound, but the atmosphere changed as she approached the counter. The intern from earlier hurried over, clearly trying to make up for the mistake. "I can assist you now. We've resolved the issue with the queue." Amira didn't respond. She simply handed over her documents. The scanner flashed green. She received the freshly printed ticket without a word. As she turned toward the priority security lane, she heard a senior staff member whisper to someone else, "I bet she's borrowing someone else's credentials." Amira paused for half a second. Then she continued walking. The distance from the check-in counter to the entrance of the dedicated security check wasn't far, but Amira walked slowly, not because of tired legs, but because her mind was recalculating. She wasn't angry yet, but she was evaluating. The kind of exclusion she had just endured was not unfamiliar, but today it was no longer hidden. It was masked with a fake politeness under the guise of policy. She stepped into the lane for government and first-class passengers, roped off with red velvet ropes. She scanned her newly printed ticket at the machine. The light flashed green again. But before she could take another step, a man in a light gray vest with a shiny name tag blocked her path. His smile was wide but hollow, and his voice was unnaturally soft. "Ms. Westbrook," he addressed her like an acquaintance. "Today, we're conducting a trial for facial recognition for premium passengers. Non-invasive, entirely voluntary, but you've been selected to assist with the trial." Amira tilted her head, not saying anything, leaving a pause. She understood the implication of the word selected, and the fact that she was the only one in the lane being detained. A man behind him, seemingly the tech director, with a visible backpack and name tag, was allowed to pass without any questions. Amira simply nodded and followed the staff member through a side corridor. The hallway was adorned with glossy posters of modern security and comprehensive innovation, slogans that now sounded like stage dialogue. They reached a small white room with hard seats and a wall-mounted scanner. The staff member gestured as if to invite her in. "Just a few seconds, Ms. Westbrook looked straight at the camera. Amira sat down, adjusted her posture, and stared into the black lens. The green light flashed. A soft bell rang. The screen displayed the message. Scan complete. Processing. The staff member glanced at the tablet, frowned slightly, then quickly covered the screen before Amira could see. "All done," he said too quickly. "There's a slight system sync delay, but it will align soon." She stood up without saying anything. He still tried to maintain his smile, but it was clear it was beginning to falter. "Thank you for your cooperation," he said as he opened the door. Amira stepped back into the common area. She walked steadily, her gaze scanning the passengers moving comfortably toward the boarding gates. She opened her phone to order a ride from the VIP shuttle service, the standard for personnel with limited government contracts. The app loaded for a moment, then froze. She refreshed it. "Access denied. Verification required." She tried the backup government app. Same error. A small but hurried voice came from behind. "Sorry, ma'am." A young staff member wearing a Virion tag, large glasses, and an awkward expression. "I think the system accidentally flagged your file. Sometimes biometric scans have sync errors that lead to temporary locks." He looked embarrassed, but didn't offer any further help. Amira kept her voice steady. "So how am I supposed to get around?" He hesitated, then leaned in slightly, as if afraid others would hear. "Actually, you should call a regular taxi. Internal services won't authorize without re-verifying the entire file. And the authority to unlock that is above my pay grade." He gave a forced smile. "Sorry." Amira looked at him a moment longer than necessary, then turned away. She walked toward the self-service counter. No more patience. She was keeping track, every detail. Amira Westbrook passed by the luxury service desk, now seemingly ignoring her, and walked straight to the nearest public kiosk. The screen recognized her name, but instead of the usual interface, a red error box popped up. "Account temporarily suspended. Please contact support." She did not contact them. She stepped aside, pulled out her own encryption device, and began scanning her digital footprint. Her Virion Access profile, typically tagged with a platinum-level government priority, now read "Awaiting Biometric Data Sync." That status wasn't just incorrect, it could be a legal violation, because when a government-verified profile is manually altered without consent, the system is designed to trigger a trace. But this time, no notifications were sent. That meant someone had found a way to bypass the law, and they were doing it quietly. Amira looked up. The terminal continued operating as usual. People flowed through. Security staff smiled. The system ran smoothly, but not for her. She was being paused, deliberately, no noise, no violence, but as precise as surgery. And that was just the beginning. The ambient noise of the airport buzzed around her, but Amira moved like a fixed point in a machine that was beginning to crack. Her heels clicked softly on the glossy wax tiles as she walked toward the business lounge, reserved for senior officials who needed private space for remote meetings. She had 20 minutes until her online call with the Defense Logistics Council, and only 5 minutes to upload the encrypted presentation. This wasn't a regular meeting, it was the final coordination before a decision was made. And in that proposal, the name of Virion Airlines stood at the top. They just didn't know that the woman they had ignored 20 minutes ago was the one holding the final signature. She entered the Technology Center, a section for VIP clients behind frosted glass. Amira scanned her badge to enter, choosing a workstation in the corner with a sign reading "Exclusive Access Only." Following protocol, she took out her tablet, opened her phone to activate mobile access points, but the signal was unstable. Normally, this area had the strongest Wi-Fi in the whole airport. She accessed Viraeon's internal portal, entering her government-issued email for authentication. The screen flickered and then froze. A red warning appeared. Access denied. This domain has been flagged for internal policy violations. Please contact support. Amira narrowed her eyes. She tried refreshing, entered the details again, then used a more secure email. The result was the same. She took a screenshot, saved the system log, and disconnected without saying a word. Instead of reporting to staff, she walked to a corner near the wall, where there was a touchscreen kiosk for handling technical issues. She started creating a support ticket, but this time the message that appeared was even worse. This account has been reported. Please exit the system and wait for further instructions. She didn't leave. Amira opened her encryption device, accessed the system logs. She found that the email blocking process wasn't random. It had been routed through Viraeon's guest network firewall, then linked to a fake report disguised as an automatic command. That meant someone inside the system had directly flagged her as inappropriate. Not a hack, not a system error, but a redirection. Enough to isolate her without triggering a major alert. She stood still for a few seconds, organizing her thoughts. Then she returned to the workstation, plugged in her security device, and prepared for the offline meeting. The light above the room turned blue as she entered, but less than 10 seconds later, the light flickered off. The screen blinked, then froze. The temperature control read, "Not operational." She pressed the support button twice. No response. She tried opening the door, but it was locked from the outside. A mechanical malfunction? The likelihood was low. A few seconds later, a young technician wearing a dark blue Viraeon jacket approached from the side entrance. He looked into the room, gently tapped the glass, then raised his hand to signal for support. Amira pointed at the control panel. He nodded, typed something on his tablet, then frowned. A moment of silence. Then he shrugged. He leaned closer to the microphone by the door. "Ms. Westbrook, it seems this workstation has been locked due to a conflict of access rights." Amira responded through the intercom, her voice unchanged. "Conflict of what?" "I logged in with my privileged access card, and the system accepted it." The technician grimaced slightly. "That's right, but someone from the airport operations department manually flagged your access, saying that the person inside might not be an authorized employee. I'm required to verify your identity before unlocking the room." Amira didn't react, but her eyes had changed. She didn't need to shout. She was taking notes. Amira Westbrook slipped her hand into her coat pocket, pulled out her privileged access card, and held it up to the glass. The technician scanned the card. A long beep sounded. She noticed his eyes widen slightly as the information appeared on his tablet. Rank, the federal department seal, everything was clear. He hesitated. It must be a system glitch. "Wait a moment, He didn't get to finish the sentence. Amira stepped back, crossed her arms, and calmly observed his hands awkwardly trying to overwrite the access code. After a moment, there was a soft click, and the workstation door opened. The door creaked as it opened, as if the system had reluctantly acknowledged a mistake. Amira stepped out slowly. "I need a copy of the flagged report," she said firmly. The technician looked up. "Sorry? The incident report. Who flagged this workstation? When and why?" He blinked. I don't think we usually—" "Then transfer it to someone who can," she interrupted. He nodded, stepped aside, and began muttering something into his headset. As Amira walked by, her eyes caught a glimpse of his tablet screen, where a warning message appeared. Subject flagged for atypical behavior. Recommend passive monitoring. She didn't stop. She walked past the lounge area, through the shimmering advertisements touting transparent AI and personalized experience, through the proud messages about progress, but not mentioning how their AI was so good at detecting abnormalities tied to skin tone and the silence of power. She neared the edge of the main area, glancing at her phone once more. No access, no restored connection, no updates, only a frozen system, and somewhere behind it, someone pretending it was all just a coincidence. But Amira wasn't a person with limitless patience. She just knew how to conserve it as a strategic resource. After being locked out of Wi-Fi, trapped in a room, and flagged for monitoring, Amira knew something had shifted. Not big enough to create a crisis, but enough to treat her like an administrative error in a system designed to be flawless. She turned back toward the executive coordination reception area, this time bypassing all digital interfaces. If the system pretended not to know who she was, she would remind it. Who wrote the rules? Approaching the reception desk, Amira opened the encrypted email chain sent from the Federal Logistics Coordination Office. She scrolled to the most important line. Booking confirmation. Amira Westbrook, first class seat, 4A, Federal Access Code, Priority Lounge, 2B, 9 a.m., reservation held. She held the screen up in front of the reception staff, a red-haired woman in a light blue suit, name tag reading, Tiffany, Customer Experience Supervisor. Tiffany looked up from her computer screen, flashing a smile that had been trained for this purpose, a smile that could both invite and deny in one motion. Hello, how can I help you? Amira didn't speak. She simply presented the device. Tiffany leaned in, her eyes scanning the subject line. Then she tilted her head, smiling lightly as if trying to brush it off. Ah, so this is your booking confirmation. Amira's gaze didn't change. Yes. From the Federal Coordination Agency, linked to the Strategic Partnership Program your airline signed last quarter. Tiffany kept smiling, but her eyes began to grow colder. I understand. However, our system cannot authenticate emails from external domains, especially from Gov. There have been many phishing attacks recently, so we've been instructed not to process confirmations from outside without internal verification. Amira responded succinctly, You're refusing a document directly issued by the UDIS government. Tiffany maintained her composure. We don't personalize. This is just the process. If you can provide a confirmation code from our internal booking system, I'd be happy to assist. Amira exhaled lightly and briefly, as if counting the rhythm of her patience. The airline's internal network has received the encryption signal from the Logistics Coordination Agency. Do you see the booking code, or is someone actively blocking the signal? Tiffany showed a flicker of discomfort. But before she could respond, her screen flashed with a small icon, a new internal message. She glanced over her shoulder at Amira, then whispered, Just a moment. Tiffany walked away. Not even a minute later, a tall man in a black suit emerged from the operations hallway. No name tag visible, but the earpiece and swift stride made it clear he was a mid-level manager with the appearance of both administration and security. He stopped a few steps in front of Amira, opened his tablet, and began scrolling through the list. She saw the frown as he stopped at her profile. Ms. Westbrook, I'm here. Your profile is being flagged for system review, he said, trying to sound casual. Probably nothing, but there's been an anomaly in the access logs related to your account. We're running diagnostics to clarify. While waiting, we'll temporarily restrict your access to the Priority Lounge area. Amira Westbrook stood still for a few seconds before leaving the reception area without saying another word. But as she passed through the employee hallway, her gaze stopped at a large screen mounted behind frosted glass. Internal notifications ran in a loop, the red-bordered frame blinking. The white text stood out on the black background. Security Level 2 Alert. Subject: Amira Westbrook. Potential procedure violation. Passenger may be impersonating government credentials. Below, there was a static image from the security camera. Black and white, time-stamped 10 minutes ago. In the image, Amira stood before the lounge door, her face calm, expressionless. A red border surrounded her face. She paused. The staff member near the screen noticed, subtly shifting the screen as if trying to hide it, and murmured, "We just received this," from the center. Amira nodded, saying nothing, then continued walking. But that screen lingered like a red shadow, following her every step. She left, but now the whole system viewed her as a threat. No one stopped her. No one came to help. And she didn't need that, because she wasn't panicking. Panic was for those who were caught off guard. And Amira wasn't one of them. She had seen the system turn its back on others before. But this was the first time it had turned back on her, quietly, subtly, and with intent. The last time that morning, she tried to seek an explanation. She walked up to the membership service desk, a glass counter placed at the center of the terminal, reserved for high-end passengers who needed to adjust their schedules, check flight histories, or handle special requests. A staff member wearing a dark blue suit and wireless earphones smiled overly bright when he saw her approach. "Good morning. How can I assist you?" Amira's voice was low and clear. "I need to check my membership account. Name: Amira Westbrook. Please verify my entire flight history for the last 24 months. The smile remained, but the staff member's shoulders tensed. He nodded and began typing on the touchscreen panel. He stopped after a few keystrokes. His brows furrowed. He typed again, then again. "That's strange," he muttered. Amira tilted her head. "Strange how?" He hesitated. "The system shows. Your account was just created. 11 days ago. There's only one flight pending processing. No prior history." Amira didn't react. She simply responded, "Incorrect. I've flown with Virion Airlines a total of 18 times over the past 2 years, all booked using government priority status. I've used this account to redeem points, update TSA PreCheck, and book the operations lounge 3 times just this year." He shrugged helplessly. "It's not showing anything here. It could be a duplicate account, or the original file was deleted during the recent system upgrade. The airline switched data providers last quarter." "There's been some errors." Amira stared at him intently. "And during that upgrade, only my profile disappeared?" He swallowed nervously. "I'm not saying that. It's just the data I have access to only shows newly created information." Amira exhaled softly, her tone growing cold. She opened her tablet and handed him several screenshots. "Ticket codes, payment receipts, seat confirmations. Scan these codes." He complied. "Code not found. Second attempt, no match. Third attempt, code error." Amira's voice grew firmer. "You erased me." He stammered, "I can escalate this to a supervisor, but I don't have access to data beyond this scope. If you want to retrieve historical data, I'll have to file a request with the aggregation department at headquarters. But realistically, it may be unrecoverable." Some logs were archived offline during the AI transition. Amira leaned forward, never breaking eye contact. That transition, was it manual or done by an algorithm? He blinked. Algorithm. The machine learning system automatically classifies and optimizes. It started tagging and reclassifying accounts with inactivity or accounts with atypical usage patterns. The goal wasn't to erase, just to reorganize. Amira reclined in her chair. The pieces were no longer hypothetical. Someone, somewhere, had trained or adjusted Virion's system to identify different profiles and silently remove them, under the guise of optimization, under the cover of efficiency, and she was one of them. Amira Westbrook opened her phone. No new messages, But almost immediately, as if the system had read her thoughts, a push notification slid down from the top of the screen. The Virion Air app icon appeared, pale gray, emotionless. She tapped on it. The screen displayed a message in neutral language that bordered on cold. Your account has been flagged due to atypical usage patterns. According to the latest optimization algorithm, you may encounter limitations on member benefits, feedback surveys, and special promotional programs. Thank you for your understanding. Amira stared at the words. There were no clear terms like warning or violation. No one said, "You've been excluded," but each sentence, each word, implied it. A removal, written in polite yet biting language. She took a screenshot, then another. She opened the app's settings. All personalization options had been locked. Seat selections, dietary requests, luggage tags, everything had reverted to default. The payment method was erased. Her previously uploaded profile picture disappeared, replaced by a gray anonymous icon. She turned the screen toward the employee standing a few steps away. The man clearly looked confused. "This isn't a system error," she said. "This is a decision." He glanced around, then replied, "I can try calling the tech department, but when an account has been flagged, usually the system locks override permissions. Even the tech team can't intervene. So even if the system made an error, no one can fix it?" "Yes, something like that. They say it's safer this way." Amira turned away. She didn't want to engage anymore. The issue wasn't automation. The issue was isolation. This system wasn't designed to be accountable. And this wasn't an accident. She stepped out of the glassed-in area, merging with the flow of people moving through the terminal. A couple with matching luggage smoothly passed by for biometric checks. A man with a dog in a designer bag sipped a mimosa at the lounge. Amira moved toward the large glass doors where she could see the runway. Her phone remained open in her hand. At the top of the screen, the flagged for atypical usage notification continued to blink gently, like an invisible warning sign. Not because of wrongdoing, not because of suspicion, just because different. Different enough to be filtered, different enough to be forgotten. She sat down on a chair near the frosted glass of the VIP lounge, not near the coffee counter, not near the leather chairs reserved for executives with titanium laptops and noise-canceling headphones. She didn't belong in those conversations, but at least, technically, she still belonged in this room. It was just that the technical part was slowly eroding. Her presence, though silent, exuded a tension that even the most self-important passengers could feel from the corner of their eyes. She had become a disruption, just for daring to exist in a place where the system didn't want her to be. The Virion Air app still blinked with the warning line like an unending whisper. "You've been flagged." The system still hadn't restored her flight history. It hadn't recognized her identity. It hadn't acknowledged her worth. Amira had sent 3 encrypted messages through the backup channel since her last denial. No responses. Not yet. She wasn't panicking, but she wasn't waiting anymore. Instead, she was recording every alert, every dismissal, every layer of digital obstruction. Because if anything was stronger than access privileges, it was evidence. Across from her, a large digital screen displayed lounge service information, soft blue, smooth interface, weather updates, flight times, upgrade opportunities. Suddenly, it flickered, paused, then switched to a black background, white text. A chatbot icon appeared on the screen, the airline's mascot in a suit, blinking innocently. "Hello, valued guest." To ensure an optimal experience for all premium passengers, our smart filter system has detected a discrepancy in access rights. If you currently do not meet the lounge criteria, please exit the space to maintain consistency. Thank you for your understanding. The words were carefully crafted, polite, corporate standard, but the meaning was clear. Please leave. Amira didn't look up immediately. She focused on the text, committing each word to memory. Do not meet lounge criteria. Not an accusation, but a classification, a gentle cleansing. The woman sitting 2 chairs away glanced at the screen, then turned to Amira, then quickly lowered her head to her phone. A businessman near the coffee counter stopped typing his email, looked up, and frowned. No one was sure who the notification was aimed at, but everyone could guess it was intentional. Amira stood up, walking toward the support desk at the lounge entrance. A man in a gray suit adjusted his name tag just as she approached. Amira Westbrook stood in front of the security desk, her voice low, yet as sharp as cold steel. "I just received a notification from the lounge system saying that I may no longer meet the requirements to stay in this area." The employee in front of her blinked and took a small step back. "Oh, I think that's a general system notification, not aimed at anyone specific." Amira didn't blink. "The timing of the notification says otherwise." He swallowed, turning toward the screen to check her profile. A moment of silence. Then he nodded, trying to keep his voice normal. "It seems your account is still under verification. The system may be automatically changing your access status based on current verification tags." Amira raised an eyebrow. "So the system can remove someone from an area they've paid to access based on tags they didn't assign themselves and without an explanation?" He raised the familiar shield. "It's not personal, it's just an automated process." That phrase had become armor for every mistake. Amira didn't reply. She simply turned and walked back to her seat. 10 minutes later, as she was composing a short message to her assistant in Portbridge, the loudspeaker system crackled to life. The familiar electronic bell rang, followed by a polite, professional, yet cold female voice. "Passenger Amira Westbrook, please proceed to the security desk at Gate 52B to process your lounge access request. This is an official request." The entire room fell silent for a moment. A man in a company logo jacket looked up, frowning. A couple near the window paused mid-sip of their orange juice. Amira stood slowly, closing her tablet and tucking it into her bag. She wasn't in a hurry, but her movement sliced through the space like a sharp blade. As she passed the espresso counter, the barista lowered his head, avoiding her gaze. An employee in the corner of the room lowered his headset mic and whispered to a colleague. The receptionist at the lounge door, who had once greeted every passenger with a smile, now turned away, too afraid to face her. No one spoke. No one asked why. Amira walked out of the glass-walled lounge. The air outside seemed colder, sharper. The luxurious calm now shattered, revealing a familiar sense of unease, the kind that only appears when you've been marked as an outsider in a system that pretends to be neutral. A security officer in a blue blazer stood waiting next to a desk marked for access investigations. He didn't greet her, just scanned her card, narrowed his eyes at the screen, then gestured for her to follow. Not a word. She followed him, her footsteps echoing softly on the polished stone floor, lost among the stream of passengers moving in the opposite direction. The PA system announced a new update, but she no longer heard it. She didn't need to. The message had been sent. Amira walked into a side corridor, the walls lined with glass and polished aluminum. Her presence here was no longer that of a guest, but of a crack in the system. The security officer ahead still didn't look back. He moved faster, almost trying to distance himself from her, as if being near her could somehow affect him. The air here was colder, not because of the temperature, but because the place no longer pretended to be neutral. They stopped in front of an unmarked door, a small sign reading, "Operational Contact Room, Level 2 Processing." He entered a code. The door opened. "You can wait here. Someone will be with you shortly." Then he left. The door closed with a soft click from the electromagnetic lock. The room was empty. A desk, a screen. A military-grade laptop bolted to the control station in the corner of the room. Amira recognized the model immediately. She knew who it was designed for, and she knew exactly what to do with it. She sat down, logging in with the practiced ease of instinct, activating the security authentication code from the chip embedded in her coat lining. A low vibration hummed beneath her fingertips. The system recognized her access immediately. No delay, no second checks, no further verification requests. It welcomed her, not as a passenger, not as a file, but as a power. She bypassed the welcome screen, accessing the Interagency Coordination Interface, selecting one of the 6 modules that were authorized solely under her name. Then she typed a single line of code. One command: freeze, view, Virion 23. She pressed enter. The system processed for 3.7 seconds. The screen flickered once, then twice. A confirmation message appeared. Contract review paused. Status: frozen, awaiting audit. Notification sent to provider and all related procurement channels. That was all. Somewhere else within Virion's data system, an internal alarm began to ring. Not a public alarm, not an alert for passengers, but an internal signal loud enough to pierce the digital isolation the company leaders had created over the past few months. On the 3rd floor operations level, a ping sounded through the internal channel of the Defense Development Team. The first message was automated from the Federal Compliance System. Urgent. Virion 23 contract. Frozen by lead evaluator. Review paused. National procurement alert triggered. Compliance audit pending. 10 seconds later, another message arrived. Not automated. It came from an email with the suffix *mil. Priority alert. Evaluator present on site. Her access has been revoked and changed improperly. Name: Amira Westbrook. She holds the authority to approve senior military transport contracts. Urgent request: escalate. This was the content of the email sent to the entire senior leadership team at Virion. Attached to the email was a photo, blurred, black and white, taken from the same security camera that had previously flagged her as a threat in the lounge. But this time, the caption below was no longer "maybe impersonating," but "verify level 5 credentials. Legitimate federal coordinator." In the highest level conference room at Virion's headquarters, CEO Malcolm Quinn sat motionless, his eyes glued to the screen displaying the photo. Around him, department heads whispered in near panic, marketing, HR, legal, all speaking in various tones, making excuses, denying, avoiding. But no one spoke loud enough to overshadow the suffocating silence after that email. Another message arrived, this time from the Federal Strategy Head. Immediately suspend all marketing activities related to defense. A serious issue has occurred with the department. We are under investigation. The executive team's internal chat pinged again with a succinct command. Regarding subject Westbrook Amira, remove from all flagged lists. Cease all profile automation. Delete all machine learning data related to tags applied today. Trace the root cause of the misclassification. But by then, it was too late. Downstairs, Amira closed the security system, locked the personal authentication code, and carefully resecured it inside her coat. Her face was expressionless. But the silence now was no longer compliance. It was judgment. She stood up, adjusted her collar, and looked directly at the camera on the ceiling of the room, the one that had been watching her from the start. She didn't need to speak. The system had already begun listening. Below, in the executive lobby, a series of internal messages spread like wildfire through every level of Virion. Team leads started texting with encrypted codes, trying to verify whether the freezing of contract number 23A would affect the Q3 financial forecast. The analysis specialists worked to calm the situation, stating that this could be a temporary technical pause. But the sales engineers knew better. The red alert had already appeared on the contract dashboard. There was no longer any doubt. Amira left the operations room. She walked into the main terminal area, not as a passenger, but as the wave of silence that had just swept through the system. A female employee talking into her headset suddenly stopped mid-sentence as Amira passed. A floor manager quickly typed something into his tablet, then looked up, his expression anxious. Security didn't stop her this time. No one dared. Amira walked toward the large central screen where dozens of flights were continuously displayed. Her flight was still marked as on time, but she didn't look at the board. She looked at the system itself, beginning to realize its mistake. Only 15 minutes after she entered the command to freeze the contract, the domino effect began to ripple across Virion's internal network, from the legal department to government coordination to the executive leadership team. At exactly 11:03 a.m., a call came through to Malcolm Quinn's secure desk phone, the one used for confidential or federal contacts. Caller ID, Office of the Department of Defense Liaison. Special authorization. He picked up on the first ring. "This is Quinn," his voice short, almost trembling. On the other end was Eleanor Reyes, Senior Strategic Assistant to the Deputy Secretary of Defense, a person Quinn had spoken with many times, always with a practiced diplomatic smile. But today, Reyes' tone was completely different. "We are officially notifying you. Your company has denied access, both physically and technically, to a representative holding federal authorization, currently serving as the primary evaluator in the National Transportation Contract approval process." Quinn tried to speak, but Reyes continued without interruption. "You didn't just inconvenience a senior passenger. You have obstructed one of the only 3 people in the United States authorized to approve strategic transport contracts under the National Defense Mobility Act." She paused briefly, just long enough for the words to sink in. "Ms. Westbrook's access has been invalidated, her flight record deleted, and your company's AI system flagged her as a security threat, without reason, without a grievance process, with no human intervention. From this moment, all of Virion's cooperation with the Department of Defense will be placed under investigation." She didn't wait for a response. "A formal notification from the Deputy Secretary will be sent shortly." Then she hung up. "Consider this official verbal confirmation." And with that, Eleanor Reyes hung up the phone. In Virion's Senior Operations Command Room, CEO Malcolm Quinn remained motionless, still holding the phone, his mouth slightly agape. Around him, department heads who had offered damage control solutions fell silent as he reread the details of the call. The air in the room was no longer tense. It had shifted into something else. Fear. Because there are moments when a company realizes the threat doesn't come from the outside, but from a decision they didn't even know they made. Just 3 minutes after the call, the next crack didn't come from Washington, but from within. An internal email was accidentally forwarded to a cross-department thread and then screen captured. And inevitably, it was leaked. Subject: Review of Profile. Amira Westbrook attached was a PDF, a personal file compiled 2 years ago as part of Virion's Future Female Leaders campaign. The first page featured a photo of Amira in military uniform, her face calm, silver rank insignia glinting, eyes staring straight into the lens. The next line read, "Nominated for the National Service Medal, Guardian Wing Operation, Rescue Mission at Kabul." The description below detailed her actions as she personally piloted the damaged Hercules C-30, rescuing 12 U.S. and Allied troops from a danger zone. And then a closing statement, simple yet powerful. Her bravery and precision under fire represent the modern leadership we need to build. She is the future we must create. The email thread went on to reveal that this very file had been used in posters for Virion's Fly Forward recruitment campaign, a campaign that ran for 8 months, appeared in airports, on digital ads, and in diversity workshops. Ironically, the woman once promoted as the symbol of inclusive ideals was now being flagged by their own algorithm as a threat. The woman they had erased from the system was the very image they once printed on their walls. The leak spread quickly within internal chat groups. Lower-level employees were the first to speak up. One person messaged, "Isn't that the woman from the poster at Gate B?" Another replied, "They've flagged her." Moments later, the HR director urgently sent a message in the legal department's internal channel. "Do not respond to the press. Statement not approved for release." But it was too late. An intern had posted the screenshot to an aviation forum. It took exactly 6 minutes for it to reach an editor at Aerotech Weekly. The story now had a name, a face, and a headline. Downstairs, Amira Westbrook returned to the central area. Her footsteps were light, like a whispering breeze, but each step carried aftershocks. Employees who had once ignored her now avoided eye contact, pulling back. A security guard who saw her immediately grabbed his walkie-talkie, whispered something, then turned his back. She didn't need anyone to speak. She could feel the change. It was like the sudden drop in pressure before a massive storm. The system had begun to realize it hadn't just flagged the wrong person. It had erased the one person it couldn't afford to erase. The first sign didn't come from the media, but from the federal database, a platform that only government contractors could access. Beside Virion Airline's name, a red tag appeared, Under Contract Integrity Review. All companies in the same sector saw it. What did that red tag mean? Loss of trust, loss of funding, the beginning of a collapse. In the CEO's office, the screen before Quinn now displayed the same old photo used in the recruitment campaign, a close-up of Amira Westbrook captioned, "Leading from the Front." It was the same slogan they had once used to promote modern values. Now, that very face became the spark for an unstoppable chain of collapse. The collapse wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, it was precise, cold, neat, starting with access logs being pulled by the federal compliance inspectors. Then, Virion's internal risk control teams, who had previously been silent, suddenly sprang into action upon receiving the official letter from the Department of Defense. No beating around the bush, no metaphors. The letter bore the government seal and the Deputy Secretary's signature, clearly stating all strategic contracts with Virion Airlines are immediately null and void. Total losses, $680 million over the next 6 consecutive quarters. Reason, severe violation of compliance standards, discrimination in automation, and failure to ensure access for federally authorized personnel. The contract cancellation wasn't just a punishment. It was contagion. Within 2 hours, 3 other federal agencies issued hold contracts on logistics accounts connected with Virion. The result? The system that was thought to be secure began to leak from within. The system records were extracted. The algorithm flagged Amira Westbrook in just 4 milliseconds as anomaly, not because of her behavior, not because of any violation, but because she didn't carry a corporate ID card. Her handbag wasn't from a luxury brand. There were no digital traces linking her to any tech company, and the probability of a government passenger wearing a plain suit with no name recognition was extremely rare. Another line of code buried deep in the system architecture revealed her biometric data had been compared against an ideal passenger pattern, an algorithm that prioritized visual familiarity to enhance the feeling of safety for others around her. In other words, the system didn't see her as a threat because she did anything wrong. It flagged her because she didn't look like the people they were familiar with in positions of power. When this discovery was presented, the board had no choice. Leonard Farrow, the chief technology officer who had approved the latest machine learning update 2 months earlier, praising it as a revolution in passenger experience, was called into an emergency meeting at 5:42 p.m. At 6:05, he was suspended. At 6:17, an internal memo was sent to the entire system. Leonard Farrow has been relieved of all operational duties. A comprehensive independent audit of machine learning models in the Virion passenger system begins immediately. The memo contained no apology. It couldn't. Now wasn't the time, because apologies are for closure, and Virion was still in free fall. The next morning, the stock market opened. Virion Airlines' stock plummeted by 13% overnight. In just a few hours, $900 million in shareholder value disappeared. Financial channels ran headline after headline. AI crisis. Virion crumbles due to passenger discrimination. Another channel simply named it the Amira Westbrook effect. Investors panicked, not just because of the lost contracts, but because one word kept repeating in the reports: system. Systemic in nature. This wasn't a personal error. This wasn't a technical glitch. It was culture. And culture cannot be patched. Trust collapsed in waves. A European banking alliance canceled its long-term corporate travel contract with Virion. A group of West Coast universities demanded full access to the AI training data the company used for assigning boarding gates and lounge access. At least 4 law offices had filed FOIA requests under the Consumer Discrimination Act. Meanwhile, Virion's executives remained silent. Inside, chaos. Outside, silence. But not everyone was silent. A former engineer who left Virion 6 months ago posted a series of posts on social media. She had warned about biases in the AI training model, clearly stating the system had become overly reliant on nonverbal behavior norms. It was at risk of creating a racial profiling pattern no one was controlling. She attached edited email threads she had sent to her superiors. One of her posts garnered over 1 million shares in less than an hour. The issue was no longer a question. It was now documented. There was proof. And it spread. Meanwhile, Amira Westbrook had still not spoken. No statements, no TV appearances, no press conferences. But her name was everywhere. To many, she was a symbol, the silent whistleblower, digital integrity, resisting in silence. To academia, she was a catalyst for an industrial cleansing. And to her, there was no need to redefine herself, because the system had tried and failed. Now, it had to rewrite itself. In Washington, a special hearing was held in the Capitol building. The meeting room was colder than the cameras revealed. High chairs, polished wood, designs outdated by 2 generations. Above, the seal of the United States Congress. In the center of the room was the witness table. Sitting there, Malcolm Quinn, CEO of Virion Airlines. His hands were tightly clasped in front of him, his shirt collar stiff, sweat beaded on his temples. In front of him were 6 senators, 2 data ethics experts, 1 Department of Transportation oversight officer, and 1 female senator with sharp eyes, who had declared from the outset, "I'm not here to listen to excuses." The hearing was titled, Bias in Machines. Can Technology Learn Prejudice? Exhibit 1 was a 2-minute video from Virion's terminal. The clip displayed Amira Westbrook, silent, flagged, redirected, denied multiple times, just with a single swipe of a card, a red light. A series of doors closing. Repeat, repeat, repeat. The room was speechless when the video ended. The female senator leaned forward. Mr. Quinn, her voice like tempered steel. "Do you recognize the woman in the video?" Quinn swallowed, struggling to maintain his voice. "Yes, Senator, that's Ms. Amira Westbrook. Do you recognize her position? She is a senior evaluator for the Department of Defense." The answer came out, short and cold. "Does your company's system correctly identify her?" The voice of the female senator sliced through the room like a knife. Malcolm Quinn hesitated, then lowered his head. "No, Senator, it didn't recognize her. Did it revoke her access? Change her seat? Freeze her travel records? Yes." "Based on what criteria?" A long pause. "A combination of behavioral indicators built by the machine learning system based on deviations from the ideal passenger model." "So?" The senator didn't need him to elaborate. She spoke for him. "So, the system made a decision based on appearances, her attire, her walk, her facial expressions, her nonverbal cues. And now we understand that. Those factors are deeply biased." Quinn nodded, slowly, heavier. There was nothing left to defend. The next slide wasn't a video. It was a photo taken from the recruitment campaign 2 years ago. A picture of Amira Westbrook next to the bold words, "Leading from the front." No commentary. The irony was as clear as noonday sunlight. When the hearing opened for statements, the one who made the impact wasn't a politician. It was a software engineer sitting behind the Data Ethics Council. Her name was Myra Lynn, a former employee in Virion's AI development team. She stood up. Her voice was small, but as clear as a bell. When we teach a system with the mistakes of the past, it repeats them. When we teach it with silence, it enforces silence. Artificial intelligence didn't invent this bias. It learned from us. And because it has no conscience, it doesn't know when to stop. Outside the hearing, the story was no longer a scandal. It had become a purification. The airline, the tech company, the government agency, all began reviewing their digital infrastructure. New oversight councils were established. Federal contracts were rewritten with clear requirements for algorithm transparency. For the first time in federal transportation, AI compliance specialist became a mandatory role. The system had been forced to blink. No more pretending not to see. But Amira Westbrook didn't stay to witness it. She didn't need to. She had done what she needed to do, not by force, but by existence, by endurance, by being unerasable. Weeks later, she returned to the airport, not because she had to, but because it was a choice. She flew commercially, on a different airline, still in low heels, a dark coat, and a calm demeanor. Only one thing had changed: the atmosphere. The gazes that once questioned her now recognized her. She didn't look back at them, because she had never needed acknowledgement. She only needed change. As she approached the gate, a young employee stepped out from the check-in desk. The girl was very young, with warm eyes, and a voice almost whispered, "Ms. Westbrook." Amira turned. "I used to work in this industry," the girl said, "but I left, because I didn't think anyone like me could be seen. But after what you've done, I'm coming back, because now I know we have the right to be here." Amira looked at the girl for a long time. Then she smiled gently, but firmly. "Don't come back just to be seen," she said. "Come back so the system has no choice but to acknowledge it." The boarding call rang. Amira handed over her ticket. She stepped into the jet bridge, not as a symbol, not as a threat, but as a passenger, returning to the space that had always belonged to her. She didn't walk away from the system as a symbol. No need for accolades. She only needed to exist, clear enough that the system could never erase her again. Because sometimes you don't need to shout to create change. You just need to stand still and let the truth speak for itself. Amira Westbrook's story isn't just about a rejected plane ticket. It's about the millions of others excluded from the system simply because they didn't fit the mold chosen by machine learning. But this time, the system flagged the wrong person, and it had to learn from its own mistake. If this story made you feel something, a lump in your throat, a moment when you realized something is wrong in this seemingly perfect world, please like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the channel so we can continue on journeys that tell the stories no one dares to speak, but everyone needs to hear.